The champagne was flowing. The string quartet was playing Pachelbel's canon. And 200 guests were seated under a ivory-draped tent that cost more than most people's cars. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my daughter Sarah's life. Instead, it became the day I learned that the man she just married was willing to commit assault and battery in front of God, family, and half the town of Millbrook, all for a piece of property he thought he could steal from an old woman. What he didn't know was that this old woman had spent 32 years commanding respect in a uniform. And I still had every badge number memorized. My name is Margaret Chen. I'm 68 years old, and I used to be the chief of police. And when that boy put his hands on me, he set in motion a chain of events that would turn his wedding reception into the most memorable arrest of my career. Before we dive into this incredible story, if you enjoy dramatic real-life tales with satisfying endings, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss another story. And I'm curious, where are you watching this from? Drop your location in the comments below. I love hearing from viewers all around the world. Now, let's get back to the wedding from hell. The morning started like any wedding day should. I woke up in my farmhouse at 5:30, same as always. 40 acres of prime Connecticut land, a white colonial house my late husband Tom and I bought in 1981, and a barn that I'd converted into a pottery studio after I retired. This farm was my sanctuary. It was where I'd raised Sarah, where Tom and I had planned to grow old together before cancer took him 6 years ago, and where I intended to spend the rest of my days. The land had been in Tom's family for 3 generations. Every inch of soil held a memory. Sarah used to chase fireflies in the back meadow. Tom planted the apple orchard the year she was born. This wasn't just property. This was legacy. I should have seen the warning signs about Marcus Reed earlier. My daughter had been dating him for only 8 months before he proposed, and something about the speed of it all made my gut twist. I'd spent 3 decades reading people, interrogating suspects, spotting liars from across an interview room. Marcus had that same slick quality I'd seen in con artists and white-collar criminals. He worked in commercial real estate development, which meant he spent his days convincing people to sell things they didn't want to sell. He dressed too well, smiled too easily, and had a way of steering every conversation back to property values and investment opportunities. At Thanksgiving dinner, he'd asked me pointed questions about my estate planning. At Christmas, he'd casually mentioned that farmland in our area was going for 7 figures. I'd shut him down politely each time, but I could see the calculations happening behind his eyes. Sarah was blind to it all. She's a pediatric nurse with a heart bigger than the state of Texas, and she saw only the best in people. Marcus told her he wanted to take care of her, to build a future together, and she believed every word. When she showed me the engagement ring, I hugged her tight and kept my concerns to myself. I'd learned long ago that you can't protect your children from their own choices. You can only be there when they need you. The wedding ceremony itself was beautiful. Sarah looked radiant in her grandmother's lace dress, which I'd carefully preserved for decades. Marcus looked every bit the successful young businessman in his tailored suit. They exchanged vows under an arch of white roses, while I sat in the front row, dabbing at my eyes with Tom's old handkerchief. For 2 hours, I let myself believe that maybe I'd been wrong about Marcus. Maybe he genuinely loved my daughter. Maybe the fairy tale was real. The reception was held in a massive tent on the grounds of the Millbrook Country Club. Marcus's family had insisted on handling all the arrangements, which should have been my second warning sign. The Reeds were old money from Boston, the kind of people who measured their worth in generations rather than accomplishments. Marcus's father, William Reed, had made a fortune in commercial development, buying up small farms and turning them into strip malls and housing developments. The apple, as they say, doesn't fall far from the tree. I was seated at the family table, making polite conversation with Marcus's relatives, when I noticed him having an intense discussion with his father near the bar. William kept gesturing emphatically, and Marcus kept nodding. Then they both looked directly at me. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I'd felt that sensation before, usually right before a suspect made a stupid decision. I excused myself from the table and headed toward the restroom, hoping to avoid whatever confrontation was brewing. I didn't make it halfway across the tent. Marcus intercepted me near the dance floor, his face flushed with champagne and something darker. Entitlement, maybe. Greed, certainly. He grabbed my elbow harder than necessary and steered me toward a quieter corner. "Margaret, we need to talk," he said, his voice tight. "Now." "This is your wedding reception, Marcus," I replied, pulling my arm free. "Whatever you need to discuss can wait until Monday." "No, it can't." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. "My father's attorneys have drawn up the paperwork. We need you to sign over the farm tonight." I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. The audacity was almost impressive. "You want me to do what?" "The farm. We need you to transfer the deed to Sarah and me. Well, primarily to me, since I'll be managing the property." You unfolded the papers and thrust them toward me. "It's all very straightforward. You sign here, here, and here, and we'll take care of everything else." "Marcus, have you lost your mind? I'm not signing over my home." His jaw tightened. "Sarah is your only child. That property is going to be hers eventually anyway. We're just accelerating the timeline. My father has buyers lined up for adjacent parcels. We can develop the whole area, create a planned community. We're talking about a $30 million project. Your 40 acres is the keystone." "Then I guess your $30 million project has a problem," I said evenly. "Because my home is not for sale. Not now, not ever." The music seemed to fade. I became aware that people were starting to notice our conversation. Marcus's face was turning an alarming shade of red. "You're being selfish," he hissed. "Sarah deserves security. She deserves a future. That farm is wasting away with you puttering around making pottery. Think about your daughter for once." That's when I knew I'd been right about him all along. "This conversation is over," I said, turning to walk away. He grabbed my wrist, hard. "I'm not done talking. Let go of me, Marcus. Not until you listen to reason." He was gripping my wrist so tightly I could feel my bones grinding together. "You're going to sign those papers tonight. Or what?" I kept my voice calm, but every instinct from my law enforcement days was screaming danger. "Are you threatening me at your own wedding?" Marcus's eyes had gone cold, the mask of the charming son-in-law completely stripped away. "I'm telling you how things are going to be. My father has invested significant resources into this development. We've already secured commitments from investors. Your stubbornness is jeopardizing millions of dollars and your daughter's future. So yes, Margaret, you're going to sign those papers, and you're going to do it with a smile." I could see his father, William, watching from across the tent, arms crossed, waiting. This wasn't a spontaneous demand. This was planned. They'd calculated that I'd be too polite, too concerned about making a scene at my daughter's wedding, to refuse. They'd underestimated me spectacularly. Marcus, you have exactly 3 seconds to remove your hand from my wrist before this gets very ugly, I said quietly. He leaned in closer, his breath sour with alcohol. What are you going to do, old woman? Make a scene? Ruin Sarah's special day? Everyone here knows you're just a bitter widow clinging to a property you can't even maintain. Sign the papers or... I twisted my wrist, using a release technique I'd taught to hundreds of officers over the years, breaking his grip instantly. Don't touch me again, I said, loud enough that nearby guests turned to look. That's when Marcus made the biggest mistake of his life. His hand came up fast, catching me across the face with an open palm that cracked like a gunshot in the relative quiet of the tent. The force of it sent me stumbling backward. I caught myself on the edge of a table, sending champagne glasses crashing to the ground. The string quartet stopped playing. 200 guests turned to stare, and for a moment there was absolute silence. My cheek was on fire. I could taste blood where my teeth had cut the inside of my mouth. But worse than the physical pain was the look on my daughter's face as she came running toward us, her wedding dress gathering stains from the spilled champagne on the floor. Mom, oh my God, Mom! Sarah reached for me, but I held up a hand to stop her. I'm fine, sweetheart. My voice was steady despite the ringing in my ears. I looked past her to Marcus, who was standing there with his hand still raised, looking almost surprised by his own violence. But I think I need to leave. Margaret, wait. William Reed was suddenly beside his son, his face pale. Even he seemed shocked by how far Marcus had gone. This is just a misunderstanding. Emotions are running high. Let's all calm down and... Your son just committed assault and battery in front of 200 witnesses, I interrupted. There's nothing to calm down about. There's nothing to misunderstand. He demanded my property, and when I refused, he struck me. Sarah was crying now, looking between her new husband and me with dawning horror. Marcus, what is she talking about? What property? What papers? Marcus tried to recover, reaching for her. Baby, this is between your mother and me. She's being unreasonable about a simple business transaction. You hit my mother. Sarah's voice rose to a shout. At our wedding, you hit my mother. She was being difficult, Marcus snapped, and I saw the real man behind the charm offensive. This is a family matter, Sarah. Your mother needs to understand that what's best for us is best for everyone. The farm is wasted on her. We could set ourselves up for life if she'd just. That farm is her home, Sarah said, her voice breaking. How could you? How could you think I'd want you to take her home? The tent was buzzing now with whispered conversations. Guests were pulling out their phones. Marcus's mother was rushing over, her face a mask of social horror. This was spiraling out of control, and I could see William Reed calculating how to manage the PR disaster unfolding before him. I touched Sarah's shoulder gently. I'm going to leave now, honey. We'll talk tomorrow when things are calmer. Mom, no, please don't go. I didn't know, I would never. She was sobbing, her carefully applied makeup running down her face. I know, baby, I know. I kissed her forehead, and then turned to walk out of that tent with as much dignity as I could muster. My face was throbbing. My heart was breaking for my daughter. But I was also experiencing something else, something I hadn't felt in the 6 years since I'd retired. I was coldly, calculatingly angry. I made it to my car in the parking lot before I let myself shake. I sat in the driver's seat of my old Volvo and looked at myself in the rearview mirror. My left cheek was already swelling. a bright red handprint, visible even in the dim light. There would be bruises tomorrow. I took out my phone and did what I'd taught countless domestic violence victims to do over the years. I documented everything. Photos of my face, from multiple angles. A video statement describing what had happened, when, and in front of whom. I noted the time, 9:47 p.m. Then I scrolled through my contacts and made a call. "Chief Chen, is that you?" The voice on the other end was surprised, but warm. Detective James Morrison had been one of my best officers before I retired. He'd since been promoted to lieutenant. "It's just Margaret now, James. But yes, it's me. I need a favor." "What's going on?" "You sound shaken. I was just assaulted at my daughter's wedding. The groom struck me in front of 200 witnesses after demanding I sign over my property to him. I have photos, video statement, and approximately 50 people who can corroborate what happened." There was a pause. Then, "Give me the address. I'm on my way." "James, bring everyone." "Ma'am?" "Everyone who was on my last shift. Everyone who remembers what I taught them about respecting victims and following the law, no matter who the perpetrator is. This punk needs to understand that assaulting a woman, any woman, but especially a former chief of police, has consequences." I could hear the smile in James's voice. "Yes, ma'am. We'll be there in 20 minutes. I made 3 more calls. One to Lisa Park, who'd been my sergeant and was now a captain. One to David Rodriguez, who ran the domestic violence unit. And one to my attorney, who answered on the second ring despite the late hour and promised to meet me at the station within the hour. Then I sat in my car and waited. Through the windows of the tent, I could see the chaos continuing. Sarah was arguing with Marcus, her gestures angry and hurt. William Reed was trying to manage the guests, probably spinning some story about a family disagreement. Marcus's mother was consoling someone, and Marcus himself was pacing, running his hands through his hair, looking like a man who was just beginning to understand he'd made a terrible mistake. He had no idea how terrible it was about to become. 15 minutes later, I heard the sirens. Not just 1 or 2 patrol cars responding to a call, it sounded like half the department. I got out of my car and walked back toward the country club entrance, just as the first police cruiser pulled up, lights flashing. Then another, and another. Within 5 minutes, there were 8 patrol cars, 2 detective vehicles, and a command unit parked in front of the Millbrook Country Club. Lieutenant Morrison was the first one out. He took one look at my face, and his expression hardened. "Jesus, Chief. I mean Margaret. It looks worse than it is," I said, though that wasn't entirely true. My whole face ached. "But it's definitely assault." Captain Lisa Park emerged from the second vehicle, her face set in grim determination. Behind her came Officers Chen and Williams, Detectives Foster and Jackson, and at least a dozen others I recognized from my years on the force. Some had been rookies when I retired. Others had served under me for decades. Every single one of them looked at my swelling face and then at each other with the kind of silent communication that comes from years of working together. "Let's do this by the book," I said quietly. "I want a statement from me, statements from witnesses, photographs of the injury, and I want him arrested for assault and battery. No shortcuts, no special treatment because he's rich or because this is a wedding. If anything, we do this more carefully because of who I am. I don't want any suggestion of impropriety." "Understood," Morrison said. "Rodriguez, start documenting Chief Chen's injuries. Foster, Jackson, start interviewing witnesses inside. Williams, Chen, you're with me. We're bringing him in." We walked back into that tent like an advancing army, and I wish I could have captured the look on Marcus Reed's face when he saw us. The string quartet had given up entirely. Most of the guests were standing now, clustered in groups, whispering and staring. Sarah was sitting at the family table with her head in her hands. And Marcus was near the bar with his father, both of them looking at their phones, probably calling their lawyers. They looked up when we entered. Marcus's face went from flushed to pale in seconds. "Marcus Reed?" Lieutenant Morrison's voice carried across the tent with perfect authority. Marcus straightened, trying to reclaim some dignity. "I don't know what she told you, but this is a private family matter. There's been a misunderstanding." "Mr. Reed, I'm Lieutenant James Morrison with the Millbrook Police Department. I need you to step outside with me, please." "I'm in the middle of my wedding reception," Marcus said, his voice rising. "This is harassment. My father's attorneys will—" "Your father's attorneys can meet us at the station," Morrison interrupted. "We have multiple witnesses who observed you strike Margaret Chen earlier this evening. We have photographic evidence of her injuries, and we have her formal statement. You're under arrest for assault and battery." The tent erupted in gasps and excited chatter. Sarah stood up, her face streaked with tears and ruined makeup. "Marcus, tell them it was an accident. Tell them you didn't mean." "Sarah, don't say anything," William Reed snapped at his new daughter-in-law. Then to Morrison, "My son is not going anywhere without legal representation. This is absurd. It was a domestic dispute." "It was assault," Captain Park interrupted, stepping forward. "And Mr. Reed is not currently in a domestic relationship with the victim. Miss Chen is his mother-in-law, not his spouse, which means this doesn't fall under domestic violence statutes. It's simple assault and battery on a person over the age of 60, which carries enhanced penalties under Connecticut law. I'd taught Lisa those statutes myself. Hearing her recite them with such precision made me proud despite the circumstances." Marcus was looking around frantically now, as if searching for an escape route. "This is insane. Margaret, call them off. This is Sarah's wedding day. You're ruining everything over a misunderstanding." "You hit me," I said simply, "in front of 200 people, because I refused to give you my property. That's not a misunderstanding, Marcus. That's assault motivated by attempted coercion, and depending on how the DA wants to charge it, it might also be attempted extortion." His face went from pale to green. "I want a lawyer." "Smart choice," Morrison said. "Marcus Reed, you're under arrest for assault and battery. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." As Morrison read him his rights, Officers Williams and Chen moved in with handcuffs. Marcus actually tried to pull away, which was another mistake. "You can't do this. Do you know who my father is? Do you know how much money we donate to this town?" "I know exactly who your father is," I said quietly, stepping closer. "And I know that money doesn't buy you the right to put your hands on a woman. I spent 32 years making sure people understood that, regardless of their bank account or their last name." Marcus stared at me, and for the first time, I saw actual fear in his eyes. "Who the hell are you?" "I'm Margaret Chen. I was the chief of police in this town for 15 years before I retired. Before that, I was a detective for 12 years. And before that, I walked a beat for 5 years. Every person in this tent wearing a badge served under me at some point. I taught most of them how to handle situations exactly like this one. And now they're going to take you to a holding cell, where you'll wait until your expensive lawyers can arrange bail. And then you're going to face the consequences of your actions." The handcuffs clicked shut around Marcus's wrists. He looked at Sarah desperately. "Baby, tell them this is crazy. Tell them." "You hit my mother," Sarah said, her voice hollow. "You demanded her house, and you hit her. I don't know who you are." As the officers led Marcus toward the exit, William Reed stepped in front of me, his face red with fury. This is vindictive prosecution. We'll have every charge dropped by Monday morning, and then we'll sue you, the department, and the town for wrongful arrest, defamation, and emotional distress. I looked up at him calmly. You're welcome to try. But I should mention that the 200 guests you invited to this wedding include at least 30 people with law degrees, a retired appellate judge, 2 journalists, and the police commissioner. They all saw what happened. So, unless you plan to sue your own guests for telling the truth, I'd suggest you save your legal fees for your son's defense attorney. He's going to need a good one. William opened his mouth and then closed it again. For all his money and connections, he'd just watched his carefully planned property scheme collapse in spectacular fashion, and there wasn't a damn thing he could do about it. Sarah approached me hesitantly. Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know he was planning any of this. I pulled her into a hug, wedding dress and all. I know, baby. This isn't your fault. I should have listened to you. You tried to warn me about him, didn't you? You never said anything directly, but I could tell you had doubts. You needed to make your own choices. I just wish your choice had been a better man. I held her at arm's length and looked at her seriously. Sarah, you need to think very carefully about what you want to do next. This marriage just started with your husband being arrested for assaulting your mother. That's not something couples therapy can fix. She nodded, tears flowing freely again. I know. I need time to think. Take all the time you need, and whatever you decide, I'm here for you. Always. Lieutenant Morrison approached us. Chief, Margaret, we need you to come to the station to give a formal statement and complete the paperwork. Are you okay to drive, or would you like a ride? I can drive, I said. But James, I want everything done correctly. Chain of custody on the photos. Witness statements taken individually, so there's no suggestion of coordination. The whole process documented. I don't want any procedural errors that could get this thrown out. Already on it, he assured me. Rodriguez has your photos uploaded to the secure server with timestamps. Foster and Jackson are separating witnesses for individual statements. We're treating this like any other assault case, but with extra attention to detail, given who's involved. I nodded approvingly. Good. And James? Thank you. All of you. I know this isn't how you wanted to spend your Saturday night. Captain Park stepped forward. Chief, you taught us that protecting victims is the most important thing we do. Doesn't matter if it's a domestic violence call in a trailer park or an assault at a country club wedding. Every victim deserves justice. You taught us that, and we haven't forgotten. The drive to the police station felt surreal. I'd made this same trip thousands of times over my career, but never as a victim. The building looked exactly the same as it had when I retired 6 years ago. Red brick, American flag out front. The parking lot that I'd fought the city council for 3 years to get repaved. I pulled into a visitor spot, which felt strange after decades of parking in the chief's reserved space. Inside, the night shift sergeant did a double take when he saw me. Chief Chen, sorry ma'am. I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. Thank you, Marcus. I smiled despite my aching face. Yes, his name was also Marcus, which was an unfortunate coincidence. Is interview room 2 available? Already set up for you. Lieutenant Morrison said to give you the comfortable chair. I actually laughed at that. Interview room 2 had been my preferred space for victim interviews because it had better lighting and slightly less uncomfortable furniture than the others. The fact that Morrison remembered that detail touched me more than I expected. The next 2 hours were a masterclass in proper police procedure. Detective Rodriguez photographed my injuries from every angle. carefully documenting the handprint pattern still visible on my cheek, the swelling around my eye, and the cut inside my mouth. A nurse from the hospital came to examine me and document the medical findings for the record. Then I sat down with Lieutenant Morrison and gave my formal statement, walking through every detail of the evening, from the moment Marcus first approached me to the moment the handcuffs clicked shut. "And you're certain you want to press charges?" Morrison asked, though we both knew it was a formality. "The DA is going to want to confirm that you're committed to seeing this through, given the circumstances." "I'm certain," I said firmly. "Marcus Reed assaulted me because I refused to give him my property. He did it in front of 200 witnesses because he thought his money and his wedding day would protect him from consequences. If I don't press charges, I'm telling every entitled rich boy in this town that they can get away with violence as long as they have expensive lawyers. That's not a message I'm willing to send." Morrison nodded and made notes. "The DA is going to love this case. Multiple witnesses, clear motive, documented injuries, and a victim who's credible and articulate. Plus, the enhanced penalties for assault on a person over 60 means this is a felony charge, not just a misdemeanor." "How's Marcus handling being in custody?" I asked. Morrison's expression turned grim. "About as well as you'd expect. He's been demanding special treatment, threatening lawsuits, and insisting his father's lawyers get him out immediately. William Reed showed up about 20 minutes ago with 2 attorneys, but they can't do anything until the arraignment on Monday." "He has to stay in custody until Monday?" I raised my eyebrows. "It's Saturday night. No judges available for bail hearings until Monday morning. Rich or not, he's spending the weekend as a guest of the county." Morrison couldn't quite hide his satisfaction. "We put him in a cell by himself for safety reasons. He's not taking it well." I felt a grim sense of justice at that. Marcus had thought he could demand my property, assault me, and face no consequences. Instead, he was spending his wedding night in a jail cell, while his bride was presumably back at the hotel, crying her eyes out. My attorney, Patricia Wu, arrived around midnight. She'd been my lawyer for 20 years, handling everything from my will to Tom's estate. She took one look at my face and shook her head. "Margaret, I'm so sorry this happened, but from a legal standpoint, you have an incredibly strong case." "I know," I said. "I'm not worried about the criminal case. I'm more concerned about Sarah. How is she handling this?" "As well as can be expected when your husband gets arrested at your wedding for assaulting your mother." I sighed heavily. "Patricia, I need you to prepare something else for me. I want restraining orders drawn up, one for me and one for Sarah if she wants it. I also want you to start looking into Marcus's business dealings and his father's development company. If they were willing to assault me to get my property, I want to know what other unethical or illegal things they've been doing." Patricia made notes. "I'll start first thing Monday morning. And Margaret, I know this is painful, but you did the right thing. My daughter is about Sarah's age. If some man put his hands on me, I'd want her to see that there are consequences, that money doesn't buy immunity from the law." After Patricia left, Captain Park found me in the break room, nursing a cup of terrible coffee. "Most of the witness statements are complete. We've got consistent accounts from 47 people so far, and we'll get more tomorrow when people have sobered up and processed what they saw. This case is airtight." "Good," I said. "And Lisa, thank you for handling this professionally. I know it's awkward when the victim is your former boss." She sat down across from me. "Chief, you taught me that badge means something. It means we protect people who can't protect themselves, and we hold people accountable when they break the law. Doesn't matter if you used to be my boss or if the perpetrator is some rich developer's kid. What matters is that a man committed assault, and he's going to answer for it." I felt tears prick my eyes for the first time that night. "I trained you well. You trained all of us well, Do you know how many officers wanted to be here tonight? I had to turn away volunteers. Everyone who ever served under you wanted to be part of this arrest. You were the best chief this department ever had, and seeing you hurt like that." She shook her head. Marcus Reed picked the wrong woman to mess with. By 2 a.m., I was finally cleared to go home. Lieutenant Morrison walked me to my car. "We'll be in touch about the arraignment on Monday. The DA wants to meet with you tomorrow afternoon if you're up for it." "I'll be there," I promised. "And Chief, between you and me, this arrest has already made waves. The police commissioner called personally to make sure we were handling it properly. The mayor's office is getting inquiries from journalists. By tomorrow morning, this is going to be all over the news." I groaned. That's what I was afraid of. "Look at it this way. It's going to be very hard for the Reeds to sweep this under the rug or intimidate you into dropping charges when the whole town is watching." He had a point. I drove home through the quiet streets of Millbrook, past the park where I used to take Sarah when she was little, past the high school where I'd given dozens of safety presentations, past the diner where the late-night shift officers still gathered for coffee. This was my town. I'd spent my entire adult life protecting its citizens, and now those citizens would be watching to see if justice still meant something when the perpetrator was wealthy and connected. I pulled into my driveway at 2:30 in the morning. The house was dark and empty, just as I'd left it 7 hours earlier when I'd driven to the country club in my best dress, excited to watch my daughter get married. Now, my daughter's marriage was probably over before it began. I had a handprint bruised into my face, and my brand new son-in-law was spending his wedding night in jail. I made myself a cup of tea and sat on my back porch, looking out at the land that had caused all this trouble. 40 acres of Connecticut farmland, worth millions to developers, but priceless to me. Tom had proposed to me on this porch. Sarah had taken her first steps in that meadow. I'd scattered Tom's ashes under the apple trees he'd planted. Marcus Reed thought he could take this place from me with threats and violence. He thought wrong. I sipped my tea and felt something settle in my chest. Not quite peace, but a kind of quiet determination. This land was mine, and it would remain mine until the day I decided otherwise. No developer's son was going to bully me out of my home. My phone buzzed. It was Sarah. "Mom, are you awake?" "I'm awake, honey. Are you okay? Can I come over? I can't stay at the hotel. I need to see you." "Of course. I'll put the kettle on." She arrived 20 minutes later, still in her wedding dress, mascara streaked down her face, looking nothing like the radiant bride from earlier that evening. I held her while she sobbed, and for a while, we didn't talk about Marcus, or the arrest, or the ruined wedding. We just sat together the way we had when she was little and had nightmares. Finally, she pulled back and wiped her eyes. "I didn't know, Mom. I swear I didn't know about the farm or the development deal or any of it. Marcus never said anything about wanting your property." "I believe you," I said gently. "But Sarah, you need to understand something. This wasn't a sudden impulse. Marcus and his father had lawyers draw up papers. They had a whole strategy planned out. They thought they could pressure me into signing over the deed at the wedding because I wouldn't want to make a scene. This was calculated and premeditated." She nodded miserably. "His mother told me. While you were at the police station, Eleanor pulled me aside and said that William has been planning this development for 2 years. Your farm is the key parcel. Everything else is already purchased or under contract. Without your land, the whole project falls apart. Marcus was supposed to marry me and convince you to sell." My blood ran cold. "He married you to get access to my property?" "Eleanor says no, that he does love me, but Mom, I don't know what to believe anymore. We've only known each other 8 months. He pushed hard for a quick engagement, a quick wedding, What if this was all just, her voice broke. What if I was just a means to an end? I took her hands in mine. Sarah, listen to me. Whatever Marcus's initial motivations were, what matters now is what you do next. You're my daughter. You're strong and smart and capable of making your own decisions. But you need to make them with your eyes open. This man assaulted me when I refused to give him what he wanted. That tells you everything you need to know about his character and how he'll treat you when you don't do what he wants.
I know, she whispered. I'm going to file for an annulment. Patricia already said she'd help me. The marriage hasn't been consummated. We've been married less than 12 hours, and there was fraud involved if Marcus married me under false pretenses. It shouldn't be too difficult. I hugged her again. I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry your special day turned into this nightmare. I'm sorry he hurt you. When I saw him hit you, something just broke. I looked at him and didn't recognize the man I thought I'd married. If he could do that to you in front of everyone, what would he do to me behind closed doors? It was the same question I'd asked hundreds of domestic violence victims over my career. The fact that Sarah was asking it now about her own husband made me want to cry. We stayed up until dawn, talking and planning. Sarah would stay with me while she sorted out the annulment. She'd go back to work on Monday and focus on her patients. She'd lean on her friends and rebuild her life without Marcus Reed in it. And I'd be there every step of the way, just as I'd always been. The story broke on Sunday morning. Local developer's son arrested at wedding for assaulting former police chief, read the headline in the Millbrook Gazette. By afternoon, it had been picked up by the Hartford Courant and the New Haven Register. By Monday, it was trending on social media, with the hashtag #WrongGrandma making the rounds. People were sharing the story with comments like, "Never mess with a cop's retirement," and "That's what happens when entitled rich boys think money means immunity." Marcus's arraignment on Monday was packed with journalists. He'd spent the weekend in jail and looked it. Unshaven, exhausted, his expensive suit rumpled and stained. His attorneys entered a plea of not guilty and requested bail. The prosecutor, District Attorney Catherine Morrison, no relation to Lieutenant Morrison, argued against bail. "Your Honor, Mr. Reed committed assault in front of 200 witnesses. He did so in an attempt to coerce the victim into signing over valuable property. He has significant financial resources and family connections that make him a flight risk. The Commonwealth requests that he be held without bail until trial." The judge, a woman named Patricia Hernandez, who I'd worked with on numerous cases over the years, looked down at Marcus with clear distaste. "Mr. Reed, you assaulted a 68-year-old woman at your own wedding. The evidence against you is overwhelming. However, given your lack of prior criminal record, I'm willing to set bail at $500,000. You'll surrender your passport, you'll wear a GPS monitor, and you are forbidden from having any contact whatsoever with the victim. If you violate these conditions even once, you'll be back in custody immediately. Do you understand?" Marcus nodded mutely. His father posted bail within the hour, but the damage was done. The story was everywhere. William Reed's development company was facing public backlash and investor concerns. Several business partners were quietly distancing themselves from the Reed family. And Marcus himself was a pariah, the poster boy for entitled rich men who thought they could buy their way out of consequences. 3 months later, Marcus pled guilty to assault and battery as part of a plea deal. He received 2 years of probation, 300 hours of community service, anger management classes, and a permanent restraining order keeping him away from me. His attorneys tried to negotiate a deal where he'd avoid a criminal record, but D.A. Morrison held firm. Chen was assaulted because she refused to be bullied out of her property, she told the press. Reed needs to understand that violence has consequences regardless of his bank account. Sarah's annulment was granted 6 weeks after the wedding. She threw herself into her work at the hospital and started therapy to process the betrayal and the trauma. Slowly, she began to heal. She even started dating again eventually, a kind pediatrician who brought her flowers and treated her with the respect she deserved. As for me, I'm still on my farm. I still make pottery in my converted barn. I still watch the sunset over the meadow where Tom planted those apple trees. And I still have coffee with my former officers when they stop by to check on the chief. The attempted development project fell apart without my land as the keystone parcel. William Reed sold off the properties he'd already acquired at a loss and quietly retired from the development business. I suppose the moral of the story is simple. Respect your elders, especially if they used to command an entire police department. Marcus Reed learned that lesson the hard way. He thought he could bully an old woman into giving up her home. Instead, he discovered that this particular grandma had 32 years of law enforcement experience, a badge number tattooed on her soul, and an entire department ready to back her up when someone crossed the line. Some people see a 68-year-old widow and assume she's helpless. They see gray hair and gentle smiles and pottery classes and think she's an easy target. What they don't see is the steel underneath, the years of training, the network of loyal officers who remember what she taught them about justice and accountability. Marcus Reed slapped the wrong grandma. And he'll be remembering that mistake for the rest of his life. Steps. I still keep in touch with Sarah, who's thriving now. She's back to her cheerful self, the nurse who lights up the pediatric ward with her kindness and compassion. She jokes that she's much more careful about vetting potential partners now. First thing I ask on a first date, she told me recently, is how they feel about their future mother-in-law keeping her property. It's a great litmus test. As for the farm, it's still here, still beautiful, still mine. And it will be Sarah's someday when I'm gone and she's ready. But it will be a gift given freely, with love, not something extracted through threats and violence. That's how legacies should work. That's how family should work. And that's what Marcus Reed will never understand, no matter how many development deals his father closes, or how much money sits in their bank accounts. Some things aren't for sale. Some places are worth fighting for. And some grandmas are a lot tougher than they look. And some grandmas are a lot tougher than they look.